Phone Truths is brought to you by Sky Mobile, and it's mobile you can expect more from. So are you tired of paying for more and getting less? Well, y'all know more, because in a world of less, Sky Mobile is here and you can really expect more from them. You really, really can. So you can expect flexible data plans, you can expect to pay less once your phone is paid off, and you can expect rewards too, the kind you'll only get from Sky. And that's not all. You can get all of your data, texts and calls to anyone in Ireland, all for just €15 a month. For life. Imagine that. I'm never going to stop calling people at that price. Unbelievable. So look, don't settle for less. Expect more with Sky Mobile. Well, what's the crack? Welcome back to another episode of Phone Truths with me, Carl Mullen, the podcast where we have a look into the lives of our guests through the prism of their mobile phone. Now, today's guest is someone who, in terms of her sporting career, has achieved the most incredible things, but then in later years has gone on to have the most amazing career in terms of TV, online, and even writing books. Today's guest is Anna Geary. Anna, you're so welcome to Phone Truths, and can I just let everyone in on the production team here, Aidan and Tom, literally had to say, will you both shut up talking and get into the studio and just start recording?
Save all of this for being actually on air.
We have been absolutely gasbagging for the last 20 minutes.
Yep.
Oh, look, thank you so much. It's so lovely to just get down, to sit down and to chat with you. And look, we're going to get into loads of different things.
My pleasure. I'm kind of excited / slightly nervous about what you're going to ask me.
No. No need to be nervous. I'm not.
Maybe a little bit.
I'm not like going to do a Claire Byrne on this. You know what I mean? There's no way.
Who was that person in the text? Show us. Show us that text.
Before we get into the phone stuff, for anyone who's listening, because before this, I was looking into like your sporting career, and I obviously knew you achieved a lot, but I was kind of flabbergasted. Like, you've had an incredible sporting career. Like, can you just give a sense of all of the different achievements that you had throughout your career?
I will say I can't really take all the credit, considering there was 15 players on the team. So, you know, without the other 14 and all the panel as well, often I probably wouldn't have had the success. But I suppose, like, it probably goes back to the very beginning when I was small. So, you know, my dad was such a big curling fan, and I come from a small little rural village in North Cork. If you weren't really involved in the GA club or the Girl Guides or the Cultus, there wasn't a whole pile else you were doing. So we were thrown into the GA at a very young age, and it was for no other purpose, Carl, apart from just socialising and just to burn off the excess energy so that we'd go to sleep at some sort of a normal hour. So yeah, like, I mean, to say I was an average camogie player, genuinely mean this, would have been paying me a compliment when I was younger. Oh, it wasn't really something, it wasn't something that came naturally to me. I think I was quite a nervous player when I was younger. I was afraid of making mistakes. And, you know, I think as I got older then and moved into secondary school, I kind of got more confidence. And I kind of started to understand as well that actually, well, if you're making mistakes in a game, it's a good thing, because it means you're doing something. If you're not making mistakes, it probably means you're nowhere near the ball.
Yeah.
So I became okay, I suppose, with making the mistakes, and kind of through good coaching and support and stuff, I kind of got a little bit better and more confident. But yeah, I came from humble beginnings. I was the girl at training that, you know, the coach would have to say, hang on a second now, stop, give her a chance to rise the ball. Everyone stand back, give her a chance. So I suppose to go from that to, you know, maybe 2 decades later, captaining Cork and lifting the cup in Croke Park, you know, under the Hogan stand, was very surreal, because that would have been beyond my wildest dreams when I was a kid.
It's that whole concept of like the importance of making mistakes. I remember like Pippa O'Connor, when I was chatting with her from a business perspective, she spoke about that. Like, she's actually really glad of the mistakes she's made because she really learned from them. And then, you know, someone you're very familiar with and I'm very familiar with, Donncha O'Callaghan. Yeah. I always remember him talking to me about making mistakes and the importance of them when he was on a rugby field. And I remember he had this fascinating thing he would do. If he ever made a mistake on the pitch, he would brush his hands off and would throw it away. It was a physical thing he used to do. And then he'd put his hand up in the air. And the reason why he put his hand up in the air is he wanted to be able to identify the moment after the game to watch it back. Wow. So that he could then learn from the mistake.
He was ahead of the curve even back then.
But it is amazing, because I feel like there's a lot of people, it doesn't matter whether you're into sport or not, like whatever industry you're in or career you're in, or whether it's just, you know, being a mom or dad, whatever it is, I think that's so important. Like, the ability to like not be too hard on yourself for making mistakes, because you can just learn from it.
Yeah, like I think like it's something that's been said multiple times. I know people said it to you as well on your podcast, but you do learn more from the losses, from the failures, from the setbacks than you ever do from success. So, you know, to give context, like I'm very privileged to say that I've over 20 All-Ireland titles.
That's what I was trying to get out of you.
I know, I was kind of like, will I say it, will I not? Because you're the Irish thing about they'll all think she's got notions about herself if she says it. But yeah, between minor and, you know, Cork, and then obviously I have 3 senior club titles with Milford, which I'm extremely proud of. I'm as proud of those as I am of the ones that I won with the Cork senior camogie team. And they're probably in some shoebox somewhere in my you know, childhood bedroom at home. But despite all of that, I've probably lost just as many finals as I've won. And I've learned more about myself as a player, but also as a person from those. Because like if you think back to even kids, you know, even as parents, when you're trying to get them to walk, you know, it's the encouragement. It's like, it doesn't matter how many times you fall down, you get back up again riding a bike. It doesn't matter how many times you fall off, get back up again. There's this encouragement, this perseverance. It's normal to fall off. Yeah. It's normal to stumble and to make a mistake. Whereas as we get older, I think that line gets blurred. And as adults, we're meant to have our shit together. Yeah. It's almost this expectation that we're never allowed to fail. Yeah. And the fear of judgment of what will people say if you fail an exam, if you don't get the job you're going for, if the relationship ends, you know, if you travel solo and you come home early because it wasn't for you. This, you know, we're so concerned about what other people think of us that often we're actually terrified to try the thing we really want to do for fear of failure. Yeah. But one of the greatest things that I ever learned from sport, and I learn it and have to relearn it all the time, is failure is not a weakness. It is a strength, because I suppose sport kind of taught me that if you're failing, it means you're trying. Yeah. Because if you're starting out to try something the first time, you're never going to get it right. And whether that's parenting, I fail every single day parenting, whether it's as a sports person, you know, relationships, we just kind of have to be more accepting of it. But I think, you know, this podcast is all about our phones. I think the danger of social media is that if you become consumed with all, and like, let's face it, social media, there's not many people are putting up all the failures. Yeah. They'll talk about it maybe with their friends or openly on podcasts, but they won't necessarily day to day put up how they're failing as a human. But we all do.
But the thing, you don't feel like, I don't feel like picking up my phone and putting up an Instagram story when I feel shite. Like.
Or if you've had a fight with Ash because you don't want it to feel like you're moaning either in that space, because let's face it, considering everything that's going on in the world, we're in an incredibly privileged, safe place. So you don't want to feel like you're giving out. But, you know, I think we do need to normalise failing more. And I think if we did, people would be more willing and kind of encouraged and have that motivation to try the things that they really want to do. So whether it is setting up your own business on the side or even doing the new gym class on your own. Yeah. Just going, well, I'm going to give this a go. Yeah. Because I think the last few years have kind of taught me that life is so fragile and it can change in an instant. And we say, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. Yeah. Or, you know, I'll do that gym class when I'm in better shape. Or I'll go for the job when I'm better prepared. Or I'll go on the date when I'm having a better skin and hair day. Yeah. We're just putting it off. But then your life can change and you're like, why am I putting it off? Just, you know, just go for it now. Sure, the worst thing that can happen is that you'll mess it up. And we all do that anyway. I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of what we've already spoken about, like even more the further we get onto this conversation. I know, I've kind of said everything I've needed to say there. First of all, I think we've set the record for getting really deep, really quickly in the podcast, and I love it. I absolutely, because it bodes well. And I haven't even put a full stop for the rest of my sentence. But is that though? You know, let's get the plug out really quickly as well. The book. Do you get into that in Anna's game plan? That kind of mindset, or do you get into that like? Yeah. I think the book was swirling around in my head for a long, long time, and I never felt ready. Yeah. Inverted commas, you know, who am I to be bringing out a book? Or, well, what if no one buys it? You know, you have all these imposter syndrome questions, and everybody has that. All of us for different things in life. But then I suppose I started to think, well, if I've gone through this and I've kind of developed this inverted commas toolkit that can help me, well, maybe there's a few other people out there that it can help, and not just in the bad times. Yeah. Sometimes I think we actually need the most help when we're experiencing the good stuff, because we, you know, nearly the guilt
Oh my God.
that can
Anna,
come when something's going right.
you're the first person who's ever said something where like that's made something click to me. Do you know that like, and now look, I know this is like, it's a nonsense compared to like winning All Ireland titles. The few days after winning Dancing with the Stars,
Yeah.
my mind was in turmoil.
Really?
I was in, I was such a weird place, but it was all this guilt of like, oh, whoa, what's going on here? And like, I shouldn't have won that. Not my brain started playing tricks on me. I went to like, I got really down. It was very strange.
In the height of what should have been
Yes.
such a time full of highs.
Yes.
That you were feeling low.
And like now I'm able to look back on it and I'm really proud of it and I
Yeah.
loved it and had a great time, but it was very strange, the reaction afterwards. And you're the first person who's ever said that. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. But we apologise for our life going well.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if that's a cultural thing in Ireland where we all like to talk about the stuff that isn't going well. Where we're kind of nearly afraid. I think going back to even that notions thing, that if you're outwardly admitting,
Yeah.
no, my life is in a good place. It's like, did you hear your man?
Yes.
Did you hear your man? Oh yeah.
Notions
full
McGee.
of himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he was a chocolate bar, he'd eat himself. And I think it's nearly a self-sabotage thing. So
Yeah.
I suppose the book was kind of constructed in such a way where there was 5 different sections, and that it was to help you through things that weren't going well
Yeah.
and how to navigate those, but also how to kind of create a sense of ownership in your own life and acknowledging your strengths. And I
Yeah.
think, again, that's partly drawing back on sport, that we all have weaknesses. And often if, when I work with groups and I talk about weaknesses, and I'll say, people are so willing to admit their weaknesses and share them. Like, you want one, I'll give you 5. But when you ask people to focus on the stuff they're really good at, silence. And then it's like, okay, I want you to share. And like, you can hear the audible eye rolls. People are like very visibly getting uncomfortable at the idea of owning. But we all have strengths. We all know the stuff deep down, what we're good at. And if you don't, you should spend a bit of time figuring it out, because I think for me, when you're trying to work on, things that you want to improve, doing it from a place of your strengths, and reminding yourself of those, it just helps your confidence a bit. And I think it's nice to, when you're trying to set yourself a goal,
Yeah.
rather than always focusing on the stuff that you're not good at and all the things, why don't you actually focus on your strengths and trying to make those even better?
Yes.
Rather than always focusing on, I need to be a better runner. I hate running and I'm not good at it. My body's not designed for it, but I have to do it. No, well, actually, maybe if you're really good at cycling,
Yes.
maybe that's how you get fitter. It's not doing the stuff that you're not good at.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just exhausting to always feel that you're coming up short and you're giving yourself such a hard time for it then, But the guilt thing, I definitely think we all need to work on that a bit more. And it's okay, especially if friends or people in your life are going through hard times. And I've been on the other side of that, where life hasn't been good. And it's allowing people and allowing me to verbalise how I'm still proud for you and I'm still really happy for you, even though my life isn't how I want it to be.
Yes.
I think saying that to people as well, it gives them permission to talk about their good stuff as well in the midst of maybe your bad stuff.
Jesus, this is a great chat already. I'm absolutely loving this. There's so much that I want to ask other questions, but I know we're going to get into it further on.
Do hit me with
So let's get into the phone stuff now.
Yeah.
Does your phone play a big part in your life?
Yes. Far more than I would care to admit, but now I'm choosing to admit it on a podcast to everybody.
It's pretty much everyone's answer though.
Yeah, and I think, do you know what, the awareness thing for me was key?
Yeah.
Because for a long time I would have told you, it doesn't. I've great self-control and I can put my phone down. And then I suddenly realised, and I think it's having Ronan and him being aware of the phone, and now as a 15-month-old, even his awareness that he's competing for my attention with the phone. And I notice that, he'll come over and hit you, or he'll back into you and sit down on top of you if you're texting or you're scrolling or whatever, because he's aware you're not present with him. And I just think that's impressive, but also frightening that a baby is able to be aware of that. So I talk to people a lot when I work in that environment around, managing well-being in your health and taking control of it a bit more, about, how much time we spend on our phones, and asking them to go in and asking them to pay attention week on week about how much time they spend on their phones. But I never did it myself. And then I did it. And of course, I was coming up with all these excuses. But sure, I use Google Maps a lot because I drive a lot around the country. And, but sure, my phone is like my laptop because I don't use my iPad or my laptop. I only use my phone for all my notes and etc. etc. Excuse. And then I realised if you go into your social media and you realise how much time you're spending scrolling, cute dog videos on Instagram, it's like, Anna, you pull back on this. So the awareness, unfortunately, in the last while has shown me I spend too much time on my phone. And what I've kind of found with the phone is that, especially social media, there's no etiquette. Like, there's no handbook.
Yeah.
This was just like launched into our laps and we were, here you go. And it's like, if you were to buy any sort of home device or, any sort of electrical device at home, it comes with an instruction manual. Yeah. Social media in our phones don't.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're meant to somehow know what's right, what's wrong, what's the right amount of time, what's the safe way to use it. And I think it's definitely something that I've been thinking a lot more about and probably worrying a lot more about is, that idea of online presence. And even me, I kind of have this internal battle with myself even around how much I share of Ronan's life.
Oh my God.
Are you the same?
Exact same.
Okay.
And it's funny, I don't share a lot of the kids in general. I don't, I know there's a lot of people who will put like loads of the kids up. It's not that I've put a blanket ban on like
Did you
putting
have a
the kids
discussion
up.
about it?
We did have a discussion about it, like, myself and Ash, but it was never a case of like, we don't want to put the kids online. But it was just a case of like, I definitely don't want to, without me even knowing, turn them into like a strand of content. Like, let's put it like that. I never wanted that to happen. But more than anything, I don't know whether people would have even noticed this. I definitely share even less of the kids now than I did when, say, Davy was first born. And it's because I do get messages from people going, why don't you share as much of it?
Why is that?
It's because Davy has now gotten to an age where he can actually articulate what he's thinking. And he said to me on a couple of times, like, oh no, Dad, no photos. And I'm like, Jesus, like he actually genuinely seems to be quite like Ash, where Ash is a bit like, oh, go away with the phone, go away with the camera. Whereas I'm like, hey,
that's like
more photos, And I'm like, Jesus, maybe he's just not into this. Maybe he's just not into photos. So actually, if I'm throwing stuff up online of him all the time, he honestly might not want that.
Yeah.
And so it's again, like, it's not that there's a blanket ban on like putting stuff with the kids up. It's just that, I don't want to do anything that like down the line he go, I wasn't really into that, Dad,
And there's no right or wrong way, because there's some people that share their kids but they put emojis in their faces.
Yeah.
There's some people that don't share anything about their kids, and then there's some people that share everything about their kids. And it's not for us to say that's right or it's wrong, but I found definitely now that he's a bit older, I want to share parts of our life with friends that online, and even because I suppose we're connected with people on our phones, whether it's WhatsApp or also a lot of our phones through the likes of Facebook or Instagram or whatever. So I want to share that with those people, but at the same time I'm very conscious that I don't know always who's watching my stories.
Yes.
And when you are have a public profile in terms of it's not private, so that you don't always know who's watching, and then you don't know where that photo will end up. And I've often had my photo screenshotted and ended up in places I didn't expect them to be. I'm reading about myself going, what?
Okay.
Where did that come from? So, and again, there's no judgment, but I'm trying to, I think I'm nearly trying to think things out right now, even. I'm going, I don't know what's right and what feels right. And like you said, I don't want him to be a part of my business per se, because, he is his own person. But that, I suppose, my family life and my work life, it's a bit blurred.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's not, there's no hard and fast rule that I go to the office and come home and I work for myself. And I just find that it's definitely a bit of a minefield. That's something that does take up probably more of my energy in terms of my thought process now.
It's interesting you even say that stuff about like the screenshots and stuff, because I remember during dancing, like Davey, one week in particular, featured quite heavily. But it was strange. I had way less of an issue showing him in that, because it felt controlled.
Yes.
Whereas it's way less controlled when it's online. Even if I'm the one who's putting up the content, it's just like I have way less control of what happens with it or what goes on with it. And look, again, 99 times out of 100, like no one's going to do anything or say anything. And especially when it's around your kids, it's just, when you have the experience of things being taken out of context, that's when.
Remember that time you got clamped?
Yes. Yes.
Remember that picture?
Yes. And it was like RT presenter, like goes.
You take a great picture card, but now that one, go Google it, everybody. You'll know the one if you find it.
Oh, God. And then like get like the stream of abuse under the article, be like, does he think he's above the law? And it's like, that's not what I was saying. I actually pointed out that I was in the wrong in that case.
You were having a rant.
I was having a rant, and I love an L rant. What I'd like to get into is the nostalgia around your phone first. Okay. I want to go back to like early days of Anna.
All right.
What was your first phone? My
first phone, it was a Nokia 3210. My mum had a 3310.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the time actually used my mum's phone to sneakily text before I actually got my own phone. That was a few years later, before she gave me my phone, but she had her phone. And I remember kind of being in a cool position in my friendship group because I had access to a phone before they did. And I remember one of my really good friends, and she's still one of my good friends, don't worry, I'm not going to say her name, a fella that she liked had a phone.
Oh.
And I was like, maybe even now I would think about it, I'm presenting love in the country and it's all about people finding love. Maybe I was Cupid back then before I even realised it. I was setting people up. So I was kind of texting him on her behalf.
Yeah.
Kind of like, and then she'd, we'd be coming into school the next day and we'd have the debrief.
The broker.
Yeah. What did he say? And, it's like, and what else did he say?
Yeah.
And, was there anything else? What else did he say about me? So it's very funny. I was like acting as the go-between. It's pretty sad when you think about it. But I kind of felt it was, it was a bit of a powerful role. And also, and they got together for quite a long time after that. But
wow.
I like to think that I helped bring the two of them together. All of my friends are going to be like, what's she talking about? I'll tell you after.
Yeah, okay. You can go into your WhatsApp group.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of WhatsApp groups, what's your most lit WhatsApp group?
Oh, it depends on the time of year. Like the Ireland's Fittest Family coaching group when we're filming is always lit.
Okay, yeah.
Usually with Donica throwing a grenade into the WhatsApp group and saying something and then leaving and everyone else going, what?
Yeah. Some form of, here's some abuse, goodbye. Yeah.
Dropping something in and then everyone going, what? And it's like, how, what?
Yeah.
That group was always lit when we're filming for sure.
Yeah.
But my husband's family have a WhatsApp group.
Okay.
And that is always, that's always lit as well. But I'm always really careful because his parents are on that group as well. So you're kind of, it's a lit group, but it's like on your best behaviour type of group. Would you believe it or not? And I didn't even expect to say this. The very first text message that Kev, my now husband, sent me all the way back in 2015 was a series of emojis.
Oh, was it like a code?
I don't. Actually, I should ask him that. It was loads of emojis. I think there was God, I'm trying to think now what it was. I'm not even going to try and scroll back to my WhatsApp because I have a few of them with him over the years. So, but the very first message, he was out. He was out with a pal.
Yeah.
And it was late enough into the night. It was probably about midnight, and I got this message, and there was like emojis. And then I'm like, what's this? And then he texted me at the time. No, I did pretend that I didn't remember who he was because we had met a few months previous. But it was just funny when you say that. It was actually just 3 or 4 emojis and really random.
Wow.
And there was no double entendres or meanings now before people are going, oh, was it a kind of a cowboy hat and a cucumber? It was nothing like that. It was very simple.
I'm going to take it that he was sending you a code. He was doing the Irish lad thing of he couldn't say what he wanted to say. So it was like crack the code, like the Enigma code.
Or maybe it was like, if I'm technically sending her a text message.
Yes.
If she doesn't text back, I can always say it was because I just sent her emoji. So maybe it was a protection thing as well.
Genius. Great move. Great move.
It worked though.
Has your phone ever gotten you into trouble over the years?
Oh, good question. Yeah, like in terms of, I think with Kev, when we fight, it's usually because he's telling me a story, and I'm like, honestly, I'm paying attention. I am paying attention as you're maybe reading a WhatsApp or scrolling Instagram videos, but they're on mute.
Yeah,
and you think they don't know you're not paying attention.
Know exactly what you're at.
Go on. Did they say that? Swipe, scroll, and then he'll stop and be like, seriously? I'm like, what? I am paying attention to you. And I think I kind of pride myself. I'm like, look, I'm a multitasker.
Oh,
we can do that. He's like, no, you're not paying attention. And often he'll just stop.
Yeah.
Or he'll just, walk out of the room or something. And like, definitely that's been something where I'm like, okay, maybe. Or he might maybe 24 hours later go and say something, people are like, you never told me that. And be like, see, I knew you weren't paying attention. I did, but and I think that's definitely something we probably all do. But I've got caught in the past, where I should be paying attention and I wasn't.
I think we've all done that though as well. We've all done that. I want to get into your highlights reel of your phone as well. So can you talk to me about some of your favourite memories that you have on your camera roll? Moments that you're thinking to yourself, geez, I'm really glad that's there.
Like there's the obvious ones, you know, that, look, I think going back maybe even 10 years ago when, you know, prior to working in the media world, I was working in a corporate environment, open office space. People would bring in maybe their babies and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, they're lovely. Do you want to hold them? No, you're grand. I just wasn't that person, you know, it was never like, you know, the maternal instincts were coming out of my pores. You know, it just wasn't me. And I was never the person to go, do you want me to show you pictures of him? And I'm like, no, you're grand. Yeah. And I always kind of promised myself that, oh, well, when I'm a mum, that'll be different. I won't be doing that. Whereas now I'm like, look at him there. Look, here's 16 pictures of him blinking. Look, isn't he the best blinker that there ever was? And like, you know, I don't know how I've gone from that to this because I didn't think that would be me. So all of the pictures, and like I could show Kevin, go, which one do you think? Which one will we, you know, send to my mum? Yeah. And I could show him 6 pictures and they're practically all the same. And he's like, well, they're all the same. I'm like, no, they're not. Yeah. Like he's you know, looking this way and that, and he's smiling in this one, and definitely those photos and capturing those big moments is key. Like, and I, you know, further back, and you mentioned Dancing with the Stars, right? Now I never won it, but I did get to the final.
You did, Jesus.
Donegal always likes to remind me actually of it. And when we were filming For the Family and Mairead Ronan at the time was the presenter, he's like, oh, Mairead did it too. Oh no, she won it. Oh, yeah. And then when Nina Carberry joined and she won, he went, oh, Nina did dancing. Oh no, she also won it. I'm like, thanks, Donegal.
Classic.
Yeah,
Dunners,
I'm a runner-up. Okay, God loves a trier. But I suppose that time for me, it came at a really strange time because I had retired. That makes me sound ancient, but I had stepped back from playing with Cork in 2015 and was on dancing in 2018. And I was missing the challenge of sport, of high level sport, of missing that and kind of that competitive edge, of probably missing an outlet to have it. So obviously I love getting dressed up and I loved the glitz and glamour of it all, but I also loved the kind of the process of the training and the pushing myself and the uncertainty of it all, and not quite knowing if when I stood in that dance floor, if I was going to remember everything. You know that feeling. It's sheer terror, but also there's such an adrenaline rush from it. And when you do it and you nail it. Yeah. Just that feeling. And it genuinely was one of elation. Like, I remember the very first dance, I was opening the show, whatever, the very first week.
Oh wow, that is pressure.
And I was doing the tango, which obviously is one of the more difficult dances. And I had to stand at the opposite side of the floor to my dance partner Kai at the time, who's obviously now, you know, on Strictly. And he said that he was watching me because there was an ad break first. And he was watching me and he was like, oh my God. And he said, you had this moment where you looked terrified. And he was like, I thought that you'd blanked and that you'd forgotten all of your steps. And he said, then about 30 seconds before we came back, he was like, it was like this mist just descended on you.
Here
and like
she
the game
is.
face came out. And I can remember that moment where I had to go, no, you back yourself. Yeah. You have to back yourself here and believe in yourself. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to go out and just give it your best shot. Yeah. And, you know, and it thankfully it went really well. I didn't make a holy show of myself. But that outlet to be able to allow myself to be competitive and to push myself, it was brilliant because you don't get the opportunity to do that too much. Yeah. And I think that's why I loved. So anytime I look back to those pictures, I also am like, oh my God, I was in probably the best shape of my life just from dancing all the time.
Jesus,
but at the time I was so, I can say this now, I was so insecure.
Yeah.
I was so insecure in the costumes. Now the wardrobe department there, and Niamh and the crew, they were phenomenal. But I used to get so nervous going out in those costumes.
Do you think our phones like feed into that insecurity? I'd imagine there's a lot of people now who are listening and they find themselves scrolling and comparing themselves to others and find themselves really insecure. Like whether it be because you're a new mom or whether it be, you know, you just aren't particularly happy with your body shape or whatever it might be. Does it feed into that?
I definitely think so. And I think if you're in a place where you are maybe struggling or not having a good day or maybe you haven't eaten for a few hours, or sleep deprivation is a key one. And if we're looking at people, then I think we're more inclined to compare ourselves and to feel like we're coming up short.
As someone who's like, you know, a new mom, what's that like in terms of the parenting side of things?
Jesus. I mean, I definitely find that sometimes it can catch you and you can feel, you know, when you're seeing all of these perfect parenting pages where their kids are getting the perfectly balanced nourishment in a meal, or they're getting sensory time and they're learning 4 languages and they're learning to dress themselves and they're 18 months old. You're like, what am I doing wrong? And I think if you kind of feed into that, Jesus, you know, you can nearly feel, you can nearly feel that you're not doing a good job.
Yeah.
But I think I remember talking to my mum when Ronan was a few weeks old, and I had one of those, you know, those grow egg things for reading the temperature in a room.
Yes.
So it would turn red if the temperature was. And then we even knew like one of those aerated homes, which are they're hot all the time.
All the time, yeah.
And I remember becoming nearly obsessive about this, going, oh my God, the temperature's too warm. And my mum was up with me and she went over and she plugged it out, right? And I was there like a relief, like, oh God. And she went, feel the back of his neck. If he feels cold, put a layer on.
Yeah.
If he feels hot, take a layer off. And I just laughed. I mean, that's what they did.
Yeah.
And we kind of turned out semi-okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's not buying into it too much because you can put so much bloody pressure on yourself.
I want to get into now the good, the bad and the ugly. So some of the best and the worst moments, but where your phone has kind of played a supporting role in like major moments in your life.
Okay.
So I want to start with, what is the best phone call you've ever received?
Ooh, probably, okay, we'll just go professional for a second. Back in 2015 when I stepped away from the Cork setup, I kind of was in a bit of nearly an identity crisis because all my life up till that point, like it was definitely the previous 20 years, I was 27 when I retired from Cork, I'd been Anna Geary, the camogie player.
Yeah.
And I suppose even though I was still playing club, nationally when I'd stepped away, we just won the All-Ireland in 2014 and I was captain and we were kind of riding on the crest of a wave. I had cracked my shin that winter, so I'd missed all the league. And it was Marty, my pal Marty Morrissey. It must have been a really slow news day because he put it out in the 6-1 news.
Yeah.
And it kind of blew up, but everyone knew about it. But I got a phone call that weekend about joining Ireland's Fittest Family as a coach. I thought it was a prank, by the way, because that's the kind of thing some of my friends would do. I was like, yeah, sure. Okay, you want me to join? And then I was like, oh no, actually, okay, hi Darren.
Wow.
Okay, sure. Thank you. No, I almost said no because I think, again, the imposter syndrome. But at a time where I wasn't quite sure, and I kind of been thinking about it for weeks, I knew that I was going to be stepping away from the Cork setup. So when it finally came out, it kind of the reality hit me of, who are you now? Because for all this time, that's what you've been known as. So I wasn't quite sure. And I think a lot of even like, camogie's amateur, but a lot of professional sports people would say that when they finally step away from the sport, they're kind of figuring out who they are after that is really hard. So being, I suppose, the distraction of throwing myself into it, and it was a coaching role, it was very different to anything I'd ever done. And obviously Ireland's Fittest Family now, 10 years later, like at that point it had been going for 2 years. It was in its 3rd year that I joined, and like I'm with them now ever since. But it was such a mammoth production, and I suppose the concept of it is what I loved.
Yes.
Families, ordinary people doing extraordinary things, stepping beyond what they thought was possible for themselves physically, and even now going back and meeting families and hearing about how it's brought them closer together, and and in times of such sadness sometimes, as we've seen recently, and such tragedy, and how it does bring people together, it brings families together, it brings communities together, and it's a real honour to be part of it. But I think that was one of the best phone calls because I kind of, it allowed me to explore a bit of a different me, a bit of a different personality. And now I also want to remind people that show is edited, okay, in a brilliant way, but we're not always roaring at the families. We don't always shout at them. I remember on Gogglebox, Ireland's Fittest Family was on, and the group of girls in Carver were like, look at them! They're just screaming at them all the time. I think, no, I don't always scream at them. Like there's times we have really nice conversations and special moments as well. So just to say that to people, we're not always screaming, but to allow me to throw myself into that and to kind of maybe bring out a different part of my personality.
Yes.
It was a great thing to be able to do. It was a great phone call.
What about personally? Is there any ones that you've gotten?
I remember finding out that we had secured our first home.
Right, yeah.
And the reason why I say that, now we all know the mortgage process, like it's like you want to pull your hair out, but so many houses had fallen through, you know, when you bid in a house, and we were just wondering if it would ever happen. Like when we were we were getting married, you know, a few months later, and we're thinking, oh God, and you know, we want to set up home somewhere, and it's not easy to do that. I know there's some people out there that are really struggling right now. Just keep the faith, because it does happen. And it was almost like the minute we gave up,
then it happened.
That's when we got the phone call. And it was just, it was such a relief. It was just such a relief to find a place that we could kind of, inverted commas, call home. It's funny because I said this a few months ago, and I kind of got a bit of stick for it. I was like, that day, aside from the day that Ronan was born, but the day that we kind of, you know, secured our home, that for me, moving in and getting the keys and moving into our house was a bigger deal for me than getting married. I remember, what? No, your wedding. I never grew up wanting the big fancy wedding. I never grew up imagining myself walking down the aisle. The wedding day was never the be all and end all. And for some people it is. But I was like, that's one day. But the home is part of the rest of your life.
I totally get that. Because like myself and Ash bought a house and had a baby before we got married.
Yeah.
And I remember buying the house and like, look, okay, I know there's ways to untangle it if it doesn't work out. But like,
it's a bigger commitment.
Like totally. Like I think there's like it's you're committing to each other when you buy a house together. So I totally get you. Yeah. As in, it's kind of on par with the signing a legal document to say that you're husband and wife.
Yeah. Well, like the wedding for me was just like the party.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it was one hell of a party. It was more of a 3-day thing than anything. But yeah, the house was definitely a bigger deal, you know, and I think when we got that, it was just, as I said, the relief and the excitement and everything. Now, we also moved into our house the same week as we had our wedding, which I wouldn't recommend.
Jesus,
I could pretend and say, no, we had it. I'm a very organised person. We had it together. We didn't. We moved all our stuff from our house in a panic. And I was driving down because we got married in Cork, and I was driving down and I was ahead of Kev. Yeah. Because I had a few last minute appointments to do before the big day. And I rang him and I said, you know, all the wedding paraphernalia you need to give to the priest.
The big green booklet.
Like we couldn't find it. It was in one, you know, I said it's in the brown box, and there were about 20 brown boxes inside the sitting room. So Kev had to go through them before he made his way down, like the day before the wedding. The sheer panic. And I was like, oh, okay, imagine going to the priest and being like, so you know the stuff that we actually need, the all important documentation. Yeah, we don't have that. Yeah, I don't think I've gone down too well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever like sent someone something that you didn't mean to?
Now, the one thing I have done on a few occasions, God, with bosses, is, you know, you might be sending them, especially if it's text, and sent the kisses at the end.
Yeah, because it's like, oh my God.
And I am that person like, to everybody. Like, and even if I'm cross with Kev, he'll know if I'm cross because I only put one X.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm in good form and I might put 2 or 3 X's. Whereas, it's just an instinct for me. I am the person that puts the kisses at the end. And I've done that. And whatever, but if it's a woman, if it's a man, I'm kind of going, oh God. And then you have to meet them. And then you're like, do I mention it? Yeah. Do I address the elephant in the room, or do I? And then I'm always panicking, thinking, what if their partner sees it? And then it looks like there's something in it. Oh, yeah. Again, hello, hand up overthinker over here. Yeah, I've done that more than a few times.
Now, you might not want to talk about this one.
Oh, God.
Have you ever uploaded something that you didn't mean to? Do you mind talking about this one? Look, talk about a loaded question, like.
Wow! I could just, if I said no, would that mean we just get to
we just would have, we would have edited it out.
Everyone's going, she's a liar. Yeah. So, God, I think it was during COVID. It was because during COVID, again, like nobody was going anywhere. People that don't know this story now, you've probably been living under a rock, but so this is the context for it. So it was during COVID, and you know, a lot of us couldn't go out of the house, and for a lot of people, generally, they were messaging me saying, I'm finding it really hard to find the motivation to exercise.
Yeah.
And I was too. So what I started doing is putting on like live workouts a few times a week. And like, Carol, I did that for 2020 into 2021, twice a week, every week.
Wow.
I did a live Instagram workout that people could join. You know, I changed it up. I spent so much time prepping them, planning them at a board. Kev's a strength and conditioning coach as well. And I'm a personal trainer. So I was trying to genuinely make them good and giving people different workouts. So that's just the context, right? So I was in my workout gear. And always afterwards, because you know you have the option to share it to your page then once the live is ended. And I wanted for those that couldn't join live that they could do the workout afterwards. So that was fine. And I was doing that and I was sharing it. And at the same time, I was after making myself a cup of coffee. And I'm talking boiling hot coffee spilled all over
Oh no.
my leggings. So I was like, oh, so I very quickly took them off, didn't think about it. So I was going up the stairs to have a shower. I never normally do Instagram stories upstairs. I'll only do them kind of, in my kitchen or maybe living area. Upstairs, and I decided, I better tell people that the live is now, accessible as a video that they can watch afterwards. So I leaned over the banisters. I can't believe you're asking me this, mother. I leaned over the banisters to just said, hey, do the, hey guys, just after doing the workout. The kind of that sometimes video that probably gives me the ick sometimes when I'm hearing about it. So I was doing that story. But because I'd never done an Instagram story from the landing upstairs before, I never kind of surveyed my surroundings. So I didn't realise there was 2 long mirrors behind me, bearing in mind I now have no anything on the bottom half of me, and I'm leaning over the banisters doing this video, the reflection in the mirror. Now I'm lucky because they were long, narrow mirrors, so at least it probably flattered me more. Nobody saw anything else, but they did see the fleshy part of my bum. Now afterwards, when I laughed about it, because I was like, sure, you'd see more at the beach. But I kind of said, right, in this moment, so it was up for, so of course what I did was I shared it, and going back to the spending less time on your phone, I went, okay, I've done the live now, I'm going to go downstairs with Kev and have breakfast.
Oh God.
When I say my phone was buzzing, vibrating, and I was like, no, I'm not going to go and check it now, we're having breakfast together.
And these are the worst nightmares you have when you aren't checking your phone.
And I said to Kev, this is why I should always have my phone in my hand, because if I was doing the usual thing of having it near me, this wouldn't have happened. So about 40 minutes passed and I looked at my phone. I'd say about 75 missed calls, messages, people going, look at your stories. And sure, by then people had screenshotted it. It was on, God knows what kind of media outlets that choose to report and that kind of stuff. And I went, oh my God.
Oh, Jesus.
So I deleted it and I took it down. And I just sat and thought.
Yeah.
I sat and thought. Now, Kev at this point didn't know, and he was back doing his master's at the time to become a teacher. So he was upstairs and I was like, I don't want to tell him, because like that, when it's anyone that's not you in your family, they're very protective of you.
Yes.
And they'll instantly be feeling bad for you. But I went, okay, I have to start taking control and lean into the funny side of it.
Okay.
So I started putting up cryptic messages then on my stories the next 24 to 48 hours, kind of like Father Ted, don't they all have lovely bottoms? Or, the bum note, or like, what's the crack? I was doing all this kind of stuff, and I was kind of always, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of people actually did message me, people that I don't know, saying, well done for looking at the funny side of it.
Because I know we laugh about it now, but that actually is something that could be quite a little
I could have been totally in the nip though.
Yeah,
I could have easily said, this is only going to be a head and shoulder shot.
Yeah.
Sure, it's grand. Not, so note to self, always survey your surroundings before putting up a story.
Okay. Well, thank you for resharing that story.
Thank you for helping me to relive that glorious memory.
I want to know, is there ever a phone call you've received where your stomach has really dropped? Like, just something big news.
Yeah. Right. Look, I think a lot of people have them, because what's minor to some person can be major to another. But I think the day I got the phone call that my dad was terminally ill, that was a big one.
Yeah.
And from the point of view that my dad was in his early 60s, he was so healthy. We used to always joke that if he was a farmer, that if he spent the night outside, in the pouring rain, he wouldn't even have a sniffle the next day.
Yeah.
Like we used to always joke that if there was meat in the fridge that was a week old, that was only for the dogs. If my dad ate it, he'd be grand.
Yeah.
It's like stomach of steel.
Yeah.
So he was he had this invincibility in my eyes. So to find out so quickly and so suddenly and out of the blue, right, that he was ill, like he had, a bit of back pain, and then went in and, they found a tumour and, it had spread, and within 6 weeks he was gone.
Oh God.
So
Anna,
to find out that it was hard to believe, Carl. I kind of think in some ways I took the phone call and probably went on about my day, and then, probably hit me at the most random of times after it, in the hours afterwards. But yeah, I suppose because our whole life turned upside down. And I think when you lose anybody in your family, particularly parent, the dynamic of your family shifts.
Yeah.
And I was the oldest, so suddenly then you're not a child. You're not, like I used to love going home at Christmas time because after a busy year of work, veg out on the sofa for 2 weeks and, you could just be a child again. You get your dinners handed up to you and, you can just relax at home and just, shut out the outside world if you wanted to. Whereas, when that happened, everything changed in an instant. And I suppose I had to step up and help my mum and, just all the rigmarole that comes with all that consultants and appointments. And it just turned our world upside down. And I think if there's a lot of people listening that are going through that or have gone through that, it just allowing yourself the space to kind of process it, because I didn't process it immediately.
Okay.
I probably in some ways didn't process it till after he was gone.
Okay.
And and I said we didn't ever expect that to be 6 weeks. But again, going back to what I said at the start about life being so fragile, and stop putting off the things that you want to do, and stop worrying about what other people think of you. What is it they say? Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind.
Yeah.
So it's just like, go for stuff, because it was a bolt of reality for me that, like, God, things can change in an instant.
Does it give you any comfort knowing, all of the things that you achieved in your career? Does it give you a lot of comfort now? Because, like, I'm sure your whole family, but I'm sure your dad was so proud of all
my
of that.
dad was my biggest supporter when it came to camogie, but also my biggest critic.
Okay.
I remember back in 2006 getting the player of the match in the All-Ireland final above on Croke Park. And the next day we were talking about it and he was still like, yeah, but you missed that shot there, like in the halfway through the second half. You should have put that over the bar. You're like, what do you want from me? But it was a really good way of actually him keeping me grounded. And I told the story before as well. I remember my very first broadcast with Micheál Muirheartaigh back in 2010. And obviously, like, Micheál was a legendary broadcaster and we hadn't reached the All-Ireland final in Croke Park. So it was for the first time in years. So I got the chance to co-commentate with him on radio. And the next day, I remember coming down from the train and, going into the kitchen, and my dad was reading the newspaper. I was like, oh, what did you hear me yesterday? What did you think? It was kind of like, come on, tell me I'm great, give you the compliments. And my dad was like, oh, yeah, you did well. And went back to reading the paper. And I was like, I want more. Yeah. Give me more specifics. And what did you enjoy? Yeah. And he obviously was starting to cop that I was looking for a bit of complimentary dialogue. So he was just like, did you hear about Micheál Muirheartaigh? And I was like, no. And at this point now, he had just lowered the newspaper down so I could just see his eyes, right? That's all. And then I said, no. And he just put the paper down. He's like, he's retired from broadcasting. So instantly, I actually checked it up on my phone to see was he lying to me, and he was true. Micheál had announced that he was going to be retiring, and it was one of the very last broadcasts that he would have done. And I was so smug, thinking, my God, I was one of the last people to co-commentate Micheál Muirheartaigh. And again, it was almost my dad could hear my inner thoughts. He's like, imagine that man has given decades to broadcasting and 1 hour with you and he decides to call it a day. But that was my dad in a really good way of just pulling me back down, keeping me grounded, because I suppose, and he did that always in sport, because he wanted to see me just fulfill my potential and constantly kind of keep driving forward. Yeah. So, like, he'd be slow enough with the compliments, but when you got them, then you really earned them, And I suppose, like, I'm desperately sad that he never got to be there with Ronan, because he was a child at heart. Like, he always had the best bedtime stories. Like, he'd be reading a book on, this is a stupid ending, and he'd go and make up his own, that'd be far more imaginative and better. So we loved, and Mum always got off because she'd be like, oh, you'll do the bedtime story. So I suppose, like, that, not allowing Ronan to share that, and and like he would have been, I know he would have been really active because he would have had a chance to be childlike himself. Yes. That's definitely something that I miss. But then there's things that, like, I'm grateful that he got to walk me down the aisle. Not everybody gets that. So I suppose it's kind of leaning into the moments that you're grateful for. Yeah. And I think the one thing that grief has actually given me is perspective. Right. And the small stuff that we often sweat. Yeah. Maybe it's sending the kisses to your boss. You can often read too much into that. You just need to say, is this really important in the grander scheme of things? Yeah. Is it? And I think that has kind of given me that jolt sometimes. And also as well, like, I think I am to a certain extent still, but definitely less so. I'm a quintessential people pleaser. So I would have always been going out of my way and sometimes bending over backwards. Maybe it was like to feel accepted or to feel liked. And I don't do that as much anymore, because I kind of feel I kind of am more comfortable in my own skin. And I think you've had to, when you go through something as serious as grief, you you do start to reevaluate and kind of reevaluate your life and who's important and who's in it. And they're the people that are important. You don't need to go chasing. If you have to chase somebody, you know, they're not worth it. Yeah. So I think it's kind of leaning into finding some way of accepting the loss, because it is really hard. And like my dad and I had a shared appreciation for Easter eggs. We'd always see who could get each other the bigger Easter egg. And I remember the first time seeing the Easter eggs being put out.
Yeah.
God, I'm never going to give him. And it wasn't even that I'm never going to get an Easter egg. I was like, I'm never going to be able to give him an Easter egg again. So they're the moments that you kind of, it shakes you to your core.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, it's all you can do is just keep driving on, you know, and living my life in you know, in his honour and their honour, the people that I've lost. So that's what I would say, is that it's just finding ways to cope with it, you know. And some days I do, and then other days I don't.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you so much for sharing that about your dad. Yeah, because do you know what? It's a type of thing that there's definitely a lot of people listening out right now who will be dealing with loss. And it's like you say, you know, it's just about learning to cope with it, or like there's no right or wrong way. Like one day you might be fine, the next day you might not be, and it's just go easy on yourself. And you know, Carl, we were talking a while ago about guilt, and I would say this to anybody, and I remind myself of it regularly, is often when you're in the midst of all the sadness that comes with grief and loss, giving yourself permission to have the pockets of joy is so important too. You know, because often when you kind of, oh no, I shouldn't be laughing. I shouldn't be having fun. I shouldn't be having this precious moment because I'm also simultaneously dealing with such sadness. It's actually so important to allow yourself to do that. Yeah. And I think if anything, it's made me appreciate those moments now, whether it's with Ronan or whether it's work stuff or even celebrating friends. To actually allow yourself to do that is key in the midst of it all. Yes. Because if you don't give yourself the permission to have the good days, you won't give yourself permission to have the bad days, you know. And I think it's kind of having a chat with yourself. I think that's what I've had to do multiple times. Going, it's okay to have a day. Yeah. And equally, it's okay to laugh. Yeah. You know, and I think it's a big thing. And when I've said that to people, people that have lost somebody have often come back and said, yeah, like in that I'm going through that. I have this immense guilt for laughing, you know, with my friends after losing X, Y, or Z, you know, it's just, you know, it's a natural thing, but I think it's something we shouldn't be guilty about, because they would want you to be happy. Exactly. You know, I think that's going to be so helpful to so many people listening. I tell you, Anna, and the bum story. I could chat to you all day long. I can't believe I'm sweating. I won't. Yeah, I'm not going to that bum story. I'm not going to keep you. I'm not going to keep you any longer. I just want to know: has your phone ever got you out of a tricky situation? I used to do a thing when I didn't date a whole pile, but I had this thing in a date where a friend of mine would ring me 30 minutes in. And it was like my get out of jail call. So if something wasn't going well, I go, oh, it's my friend, they need me, I'm really sorry, I have to go. Genius. Yeah, and I've taken the call a few times. I had taken the call. She also did it on the first date I had with Kev. Thankfully, I never needed to answer the phone. Brilliant. I told him a few months later, go, you know, I had that. I had that safety net. But yeah, I never had to take that call, and the rest is history. But I highly recommend it to people. Just 30 minutes into it. If it's awkward, you're like, oh, I have to, and you could make up who it was. Yes. My mom, they really need me. I'm sorry, I have to go. Or it's a great one. A great call. I'm not going to tell you who I did it to though. If they're listening to this, be like, that. Yeah, I remember she took a call and I never heard from her again. Yeah. Okay, couple of little short questions before we go. Yes. Who is your most called person? My mum. I would ring my mum multiple times a day. You know, ma'am, you know, what do I preheat the oven to cook salmon? Ma'am, how long does meat last in the freezer? You know, like just all these random questions. What should I wash? If I want to wash clothes, what setting should I wash the delicates on, or any of that kind of stuff? Yeah, I think sometimes she doesn't even answer the phone to me now at this point. But yeah, it's just to keep in contact, because like she lives in Cork, I live in Kildare, so it's just to really have those moments of connection, I think, you know. And also she's someone that, you know, she's put up with me this long at this point now, so she'll allow me to have my rambles and have my moans. And, you know, sometimes the bitching are also the, come here, you'll never guess. You'll never guess what I heard. No, you didn't hear this from me. She loves those conversations. Yeah. She pretends she doesn't, but she's there for me. God bless our mums. Who's the most famous person in your phone book? Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to pick someone because I think he's a household name and everybody has always such great things to say about him. Paul McGrath. Oh, it's a great one. Like, I mean, I was 3 years old
when Italia 90 happened. I feel like I was there.
Yeah.
Such was the accounts of what it did for Ireland as a nation, you know. And anytime you hear it, put him under pressure.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, Paul McGrath was just, he was everything that was good about that team. And he's just, I've worked with him a few times since. He is a gentleman of the highest order. You would not know that he has enjoyed the fame and the challenges and the struggles that he has. He's just a wonderful person. So yeah, and anytime I meet him, like, he's just always inquiring about family and everything too. And yeah, he's Paul McGrath. Ooh,
totally.
So,
Here, a lovely man. Final question for you, which we ask everyone. Has your phone taught you anything about yourself?
The phone has probably helped me reevaluate my communication with people, because it's easy to send a throwaway WhatsApp to check in with somebody, but like, you're doing that nearly more for you than you are for them. You're kind of ticking a box. It's good for the conscience. Or you're sending a message underneath somebody's Instagram photo saying, oh, you look great, hon, we have to catch up soon. And sometimes when you're watching people on your phone, you kind of forget you actually haven't met them physically.
Yeah.
So I suppose, and definitely in the last few years, because the importance of human connection, whether it's COVID or whether it's life experiences, I've kind of realised that the phone is great, but actually, you know, it's the contact, the connection is what's key. You know, so spending actual time with my friends in person, you know what I mean? Contact to contact, and actually being able to make contact, hug them, laugh with them, clink glasses, you know, whatever it is. So that's kind of something I think it's really important that the phone has taught me, that in order to be and show up as your best for the people in your life that mean the most to you, you need to physically be there.
Yeah.
It's not like, sometimes the phone, as great as it is to keep contact, it just won't cut it. So that's a work in progress, though.
And it is for all of us.
Yeah, because you know, we've all been there where you make the arrangement or the meeting with somebody a few weeks. And then it's the evening, you're like, oh, why did I say I'd meet them? I have that too, but you always feel better when you do meet them.
Well, I'll tell you, I feel better for having had this chat with you. I loved it, and I could keep going for another 24
I think your producer,
hours.
Shut up
and
like,
go.
Get out.
Come here, Anna, thank you so much for sharing your phone truths today.
Thank you for having me on. I loved the chat.
Phone Truths is brought to you by Sky Mobile, and it's mobile you can expect more from. So are you tired of paying for more and getting less? Well, y'all know more, because in a world of less, Sky Mobile is here, and you can really expect more from them. You really, really can. So you can expect flexible data plans, you can expect to pay less once your phone is paid off, and you can expect rewards too, the kind you'll only get from Sky. And that's not all. You can get all of your data, texts and calls to anyone in Ireland, all for just €15 a month. For life. Imagine that. I'm never going to stop calling people at that price. Unbelievable. So look, don't settle for less. Expect more with Sky Mobile.